Hello friends, welcome back. In this video, we are going to learn about iterators. Suppose I have a variable and we store an array in this variable. Our variable name is A and I save different type of animals name in that array. And now I want to traversing array value one by one. And we can do it very easily using loops. Like while loop, do while loop, for of loop, for in, for each and map. Help of these loops, we can traversing this array value. Traversing mean travel. To cow, we can travel to dog, then we can travel to cat. If we want to print their value, we can. And also we can use it anywhere else. If we want to traversing this array with for loop, then you need to type for. Inside the parenthesis, we need to declare a variable. And we need to assign this variable with 0. Because our array index starts from 0, and then we need to check if I value is less than array length, then print this message. And also we need to increment it one by one. So we type I++. We already know about it. Similarly, to get the same result, we can use while loop. So I hope you already know about it. So all the loops are used for traversing. But a new name has been added to this list. With the help of iterators method, we can traversing this array value. But the question is, we already have lot of loops to do that work. Then why we need to iterators? What is the difference between iterators and other loops? We don't have a complete control with other loops. Once I run these loops, it's going to print all the value of our array. Otherwise, we need to use if condition to extract exact value. But in iterator methods, we have full control of traversing. We can print whatever value we want. Suppose first I'm going to print our first animal, cow, and then I type other line of codes. And now I want to print the third value, cat. In that case, we can use iterator method. So let me show you the basic syntax of iterator function. Suppose I want to traverse this array. So first we need to take a variable, and then we need to use a JavaScript function symbol.iterator. And we learned about symbol in our previous video. Symbol is a unique data type. Iterator means I want to traverse all the value from this array. So using this method, we can assign all the array value in v variable. And then if we want to print any value, just we need to type next method b.next. It's going to print the first value of array, cow. Similarly, if I want to print their next value, dog and cat, we need to call the same function once again, b.next. For our second call, it return dog, and for our third call, it return cat. The main benefit is, if I print our first value, cow, then we can do our other line of codes. And now I want to print the last animal, cat. Then we can do it very easily using this iterator function. Not only that, we can use iterator with string. And also we can use it with objects. So let's start the practical and try to understand what is iterator. Here you can see I open my web editor, Visual Studio Code editor. And I create a HTML file, index.html. And I open this file in my browser using live server extension. First I'm going to type script tag. First I'm going to create an array inside the script tag. Let num. And inside the array I'm going to add numeric values. And I'm going to type 20, 40 and 60. And now I want to print this value in my console. So I'm going to type console.log inside the parenthesis our variable name is num and semicolon to end this line. If I save this file, you can see in my console it print our array. And if I open this array, you can see an option proto. If I click on it, you can see some methods. These methods are all related to array. And if I scroll down a little bit, you can see a function symbol.iterator. So I'm going to use this one. Using this, we can travel every value in our array. Means we can iterate our values. So let's do it. So I'm going to check this function inside my console, but first I'm going to type typeof, and I'm going to use this function with num array. Then inside the square braces symbol dot iterator. Here I'm going to check the new function type, so I use typeof. And if I save this file, you can see in my console it print it's a function. So using this function we can iterate our array. For this, first we need to take a variable. So I'm going to remove this console line, and I'm going to create a variable let, and our variable name is iter. And obviously we don't need the type of function, so I'm going to remove it. And after the square braces we need to use round braces, means function sign, because it's a function, and I'm going to call this function here. And whenever I call this function, it's going to store the value in this variable, and I'm going to print this value in my console. Console.log inside the parenthesis iter and semicolon to end this line. And if I save this file, you can see it return an array. And if I open this array, you can see, and if I open this proto option, you can see a function fNext. Next is a function, and using this next function we can read every value in our array. So let's do it. So after iter, I'm going to type dot next, and also need to type round braces because it's a function. So using this method we can print our first value. And if I save this file, you can see it's return an object, and we get a two key. First one is value, second one is done. In value we get our first value 20, but in done it's return false. What's that mean? It's mean when we use iterator, and if we print an array inside this function, and if there is a value inside this array, every time it's going to return false. You can see after 20 there is another value 40. Our iterator function know that there is another value after 20. That's why it return false. Let's call this function 2 times. So I'm going to duplicate this line 2 times. And if I save this file, now you can see in my console, and you can see it print our value, then it print false. And once again it print our third value, and it print false. But if I call this function once again, and if I save this file, you can see our value is undefined. You can see there is no fourth value in our array, so it's print undefined. And inside the done, it's written true, because there is no value left to print, so it's written true. And remember, we have full control on it. Suppose I want to skip the first value in our array, so I'm going to remove this console.log section. And if I save this file, you can see it skip our first value and it print our second value 40. And I'm going to remove this line for now. I don't need this line. And if we want to skip our second value, then we need to remove this line, and we need to call this function once again. And if I save this file, you can see it print our third value only. So whenever we call the next function, it's going to iterate the next value from our array. If we use first time, then it's going to iterate our first value. And similarly, if we call this function once again, then it's going to iterate our second value. So we have total control on it. And if I print message between them, so I'm going to type console.log. Inside the parenthesis, I'm going to type a string hi, and semicolon to end this line. And I'm going to duplicate this line 4th time. If I save this file, you can see in my console, it's not going to affect our iteration. So the benefit is, whenever we check the iterator value, we can. But if we use for loop or any other loop, obviously then we need to print all the value at once. But using iterator function, we can use any value when we want. As you can see, it's return an object, value, and we get 2 keys from it, value and done. And if we want to see the value directly, yes, we can. So I'm going to remove all of these, and after next I'm going to type dot value. And if I save this file, you can see it directly print our value 60. It's an object, so we can print their value using dot value method. Similarly, we can check done key property. If I duplicate this line and change dot done, and if I save this file, it's returned true. Why it's returned true? Because we call our next function 4th time and there is no 4th value in our array. That's why it returned true. And if I remove any function and then save the file, and you can see this time it's returned false. And it returns false for our 3rd iteration. Suppose if we have 300 value in our array, then obviously we need to create loop for that. We can create our own loop, otherwise we can use do while loop or while loop. So let's see how it's work. We don't need to change anything and I'm going to store this value in a variable. So I'm going to type let and our variable name is result, and I'm going to remove this line and I'm going to create a while loop. So I'm going to use a while loop and I run this while loop until the done property return true. So inside the parenthesis I'm going to type not result dot done. It's run the while loop until the value is true. So I use not operator, and inside the loop I'm going to print the value. So console dot log, inside the parenthesis I'm going to type result dot value and semicolon to end this line. So in that way we can print our all the value in our console. And as you know, we need to increment our while loop to get the next result. So I'm going to copy this line and I'm going to paste it here. As a result, it's going to iterate our next value 40. So if I save this file, you can see in my console it print our all the values. No matter how much value we have, it's going to print all the values. So in that way we can use iterator function inside the while loop, and also we can use this iterator function with string or object. So in the next part of this video we are going to see an example with string. Thanks for watching this video. Once again I'm back to my Visual Studio Code editor, and now I'm going to run iterator function with string. So I'm going to duplicate this line and I'm going to comment out this previous one, and I'm going to assign a string value to this variable. So I'm going to remove this one and I'm going to type hello world, and I don't need to change anything in my code. So if I save this file, you can see in my console it's print all the character, and you can see it's print 2 here because after L we need to use another L character for hello world. That's why it skipped 1 character, so we can print 1 by 1 character from our string, and also it count space. So in that way we can use iterator function with string. In our last example I'm going to show you how we can create our own iterator function. So first I'm going to remove this line and then I'm going to uncomment this one. Now I'm going to read all the values, but I'm not going to use iterator method. I'm going to create my own iterator and I'm going to remove all this line, and here I'm going to create my own function, and our function name is number, and whenever I call this function I'm going to pass this array. So I'm going to create the function name number, function number. Whatever value I send as an argument, to get the value we need to create a variable. In our case array means array, because I'm going to pass array as an argument. So first inside the curly braces I'm going to take a variable where next num equal to 0. For iteration purpose we need this variable because we know our first index of array is 0, and later I'm going to increment this variable and this function going to return a value. So I'm going to type return and then I use curly braces, and it's going to return a function, and we can take any name for this function. So I'm going to type next, and in the next function I'm going to return another value, and here I create function inside this function, and inside the curly braces I want to return. If you remember, our iterator function return an object, and inside the objects it's return value and done. So similarly I'm going to return an object. For keyword I'm going to type value, and I'm going to return whatever array I get. So I'm going to type a double r, and inside the square braces I'm going to increment this variable. So I'm going to copy this variable and paste it here, and I use and I use ++ sign to increment it. And our next property is done, and here I am going to pass false. And now I want to call this function in my console. So I'm going to type console.log inside the parenthesis iter dot, and our function name is next. So if I save this file, it's going to print our first value 20. So if I save this file, you can see in my console it's written an object and it's print our first value 20, done false, and value is 20. And now I'm going to call this function 3 times. So I'm going to duplicate this line 2 times. And if I save this file, you can see in my console it print out 3 different values. But if I call this function 4th time and save this file, it's written undefined. But the problem is done return false. But we need to return true, as like our iterator function return. For this, we need to move this return section inside the if condition. So here I'm going to create a if condition, if, and also I'm going to create else condition, else. And inside the if condition, I'm going to check the done value. So inside the if condition, I'm going to type if next num value less than array.length. It means if next num value less than array.length, then inside the if condition is going to return this result. And in our else part, we need to return done true. So I'm going to copy this line and paste it here. And I'm going to remove this value section and set done value true. That's it, guys. If I save this file, you can see, oops, I did some silly mistake. I typed wrong spelling for length, ZTH. If I save this file, now you can see in my console, for this 3 value, it written false. And there is no 4th value in our array, so it's written true. So now it's clear for you how we can create our own iterator function. We basically use it if we want to control the iteration. And if we want to just print the array value, yes, we can. Just we need to type dot value. If I save this file, you can see the exact value 20. So this is our own function which act like an iterator function. But as you can see, we need to use multiple line of codes to get the result. But if we use iterator function, then single line of code is enough to get the result. So in the next video, we are going to learn about generators. Thanks for watching this video.